A wedding is supposed to be the bride's day, the culmination of dreams, the moment where every detail, every vow, every smile revolves around her and her partner. For me, it had always been about more than just the fairy tale vision. It was the celebration of everything my fiancé and I had built together, a day meant to symbolize the beginning of our new life. I spent months planning it meticulously, choosing the venue, the flowers, even the smallest details like the shade of the table runners. I wanted it to be perfect, and more importantly, I wanted it to feel like us. But if there's one thing I had learned about my mother over the years, it was that spotlight and attention were her favorite accessories. For as long as I could remember, she had an uncanny ability to shift the focus toward herself at the most inopportune moments. Birthdays, school ceremonies, holidays, she always found a way to insert herself into the narrative. Her methods were subtle at times, comments that made her the center of conversation, or bold, like showing up to family dinners in extravagant outfits that turned heads. I never imagined she'd dare to pull something at my wedding, though. I thought she'd finally let me have my moment. My wedding day started off perfectly. The venue was breathtaking, with soft golden sunlight filtering through the trees, casting a magical glow over the outdoor ceremony. The aisle was lined with blooming roses, the gentle hum of violin music setting the mood. I could hardly contain my excitement as I walked down the aisle, all eyes on me. It was everything I had ever dreamed of, and the love and joy radiating from everyone made my heart soar. As the ceremony ended and the reception began, I felt like I was walking on air. The speeches were heartfelt, the laughter contagious, and the food divine. Everyone seemed genuinely happy for us, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe and simply enjoy the moment. My mother, dressed in a gown that was just shy of bridal territory, had been surprisingly quiet throughout the day. I took this as a small victory. Perhaps she'd finally decided to let me have the spotlight. That assumption, however, was short-lived. It happened during the toast. My maid of honor had just finished a beautiful speech about love, friendship, and perseverance, leaving me wiping away tears of gratitude. My mother rose from her seat next, holding her champagne flute high and flashing her signature dramatic smile. I braced myself. She was notoriously long-winded during speeches, but I assumed this would be harmless. "I just want to say," she began, her voice carrying over the quiet murmurs of the crowd, "how proud I am of my daughter today. She's radiant, isn't she? Truly breathtaking." The guests nodded, smiling warmly. So far, so good, I thought. But then her tone shifted. She paused, her smile widening as she glanced around the room. "And speaking of blessings and miracles," she continued, her voice growing louder, "I have some wonderful news to share with all of you." The crowd stiffened slightly, confusion flitting across their faces. My heart sank, a familiar knot forming in my stomach. Her next words rang out like a gong. "I'm pregnant." The room went silent. Guests exchanged bewildered glances. My father looked mortified. And me? I felt like the floor had fallen out from beneath me. My mother stood there beaming, basking in the stunned reaction of the crowd, completely unfazed by the fact that she had just hijacked my wedding day. I sat frozen in my chair, the weight of disbelief and anger pressing down on me. Pregnant? At her age? And this was the moment she chose to announce it? My hands gripped the tablecloth, my mind spinning as I tried to process her words. The guests erupted into polite applause, murmuring congratulations, but their attention was no longer on me or my husband. It was on her. She had stolen the show in the most dramatic way possible. The room buzzed with forced congratulations, guests clapping politely as my mother basked in the attention her dramatic announcement had just created. I sat frozen, clutching the edge of the table as disbelief and anger washed over me in waves. She had done it. She had stolen my moment, the one day meant to celebrate my love, my marriage, and my future. And she had done it in the most theatrical way possible. But as much as I wanted to scream, cry, or storm out, I knew that giving in to my emotions would only validate her actions. She thrived on attention, good or bad, and I refused to let her think she had won. My wedding wasn't about her, and I wasn't about to let her rewrite that narrative. The first thing I did was reclaim control. Standing up, I clinked my champagne glass loudly, forcing the murmuring room to focus back on me. "Thank you all for your kind words for my mother," I said, smiling through gritted teeth. "And congratulations to her on her wonderful news. But tonight, we're here to celebrate my marriage to James, a love that is full of joy, commitment, and the support of everyone in this room." I emphasized the word everyone, locking eyes with my mother briefly before turning away. The applause that followed was louder, more enthusiastic than the polite clapping that had greeted her announcement. Guests seemed relieved to shift the focus back to the bride and groom, and I felt a spark of satisfaction knowing that my mother had been subtly upstaged, even if only for a moment. The evening continued, but the tension lingered. My mother's announcement had cast a shadow over the day, and while the guests tried their best to remain celebratory, I could feel their curiosity simmering beneath the surface. Conversations in hushed tones surrounded me. Questions about her pregnancy, comments about the timing, murmurs of disbelief. Some even approached me, offering awkward apologies for how things played out. Each interaction was a reminder that my mother had managed to steal not just the spotlight, but the emotional tone of the day as well. And then, during the cake-cutting ceremony, she struck again. James and I had just begun the traditional moment. The photographer perfectly poised. The guests gathered around to watch as we sliced into the beautiful tiered cake. The room felt peaceful for the first time in hours, the focus completely back on us. But then, just as James offered me the first bite, my mother's voice rang out, loud and dramatic. "Oh my goodness," she gasped, clutching her stomach theatrically. "I think I felt something move." The silence that followed was deafening. Guests exchanged stunned glances, some visibly cringing at her interruption. The photographer hesitated, lowering his camera slightly as everyone turned to look at her. My father, who had spent the evening trying to fade into the background, finally stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder and muttering something I couldn't hear. She brushed him off, smiling brightly as if she had just delivered the line of the century. I dropped the cake knife onto the table and turned to face her, my patience finally snapping. "Mom," I said, my voice cutting through the tension, "this is my wedding. Can you please stop trying to make it about you?" The room gasped collectively, the guests clearly shocked by my bluntness. My mother blinked, her smile faltering for the first time all evening. She looked at me as if I had slapped her, her mouth opening and closing without words. For a moment, I thought she might argue, might twist the situation to paint herself as the victim. But instead, she turned and walked away, her face flushed red with embarrassment. My father followed behind her, his expression a mix of mortification and relief. The rest of the evening continued without further incident, but the damage had already been done. I danced with James, smiled for photos, and made rounds to speak with the guests, but the energy of the day wasn't the same. My mother's announcement had stolen something I couldn't fully get back, the pure, untainted joy that should have defined my wedding day. In the days that followed, I waited for her apology, but it never came. Instead, she sent a long text filled with faux empathy and passive aggression. "I'm sorry if my announcement upset you, but I thought you'd be happy for me. After all, weddings are about celebrating family too, right?" The message was infuriating, but I didn't respond. I knew better than to feed into her narrative. Over time, I focused on rebuilding what had been overshadowed. James and I poured our energy into our honeymoon, creating memories that were ours alone, far away from the drama of the wedding day. We reminded ourselves that while the day hadn't been perfect, our love was, and that was what truly mattered. Months later, when my mother's pregnancy became the centerpiece of every family gathering, I chose to step back. I wasn't interested in competing for attention or revisiting the resentment her announcement had caused. Instead, I focused on my marriage, my career, and the people who genuinely celebrated my happiness without trying to steal it. Looking back, my mother's antics taught me an important lesson. Perfection isn't guaranteed, and sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you in ways you never expected. But those moments don't define you. What defines you is how you rise above, how you reclaim your narrative, and how you choose to focus on the love and joy that truly matter.